They said no black man could lead a fighter squadron until he brought all 50 pilots home alive. The impossible assignment. The biting wind of the English airfield did little to cool the fire in Colonel Marcus Reynolds' gut. He stood ramrod straight. A man carved from granite and intellect, his uniform immaculate, his gaze sharp enough to cut through the thickest fog of prejudice. For years he had flown, studied, and excelled, his brilliance undeniable, yet always shadowed by the unspoken, insidious question, could a black man truly lead? The answer, whispered in the corridors of power, was a resounding, dismissive no. But today that answer was about to be challenged. General Sterling, a man whose face was a roadmap of wartime weariness and ingrained skepticism, gestured for Reynolds to sit. The general's office was sparse, functional, much like the man himself. Colonel Reynolds, Sterling began, his voice gravelly, "You're aware of the unique challenges we face with the 50th Fighter Squadron." Reynolds nodded. The 50th was a unit of all-black pilots, a grand experiment born of necessity and grudging political will, largely seen as a dumping ground for problem pilots and obsolete equipment. Their morale was in the gutter, their reputation worse. "They've been through 3 commanders in as many months," Sterling continued, leaning forward, his eyes fixed on Reynolds. "Discipline is lax, training is inadequate, and their combat record is frankly abysmal. We're losing too many bombers on the deep penetration runs, and the 50th is supposed to be part of the escort." He paused, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. "I'm giving you command of the 50th. Effective immediately." Reynolds felt a jolt, not of surprise, but of grim recognition. This wasn't a promotion, it was a test, a crucible designed to fail. If he succeeded, it would be an anomaly. If he failed, it would confirm every racist assumption about black leadership. He was David, handed a slingshot, and told to face Goliath, not just the Goliath of the German Luftwaffe, but the towering, sneering giant of systemic prejudice within his own ranks. He thought of the biblical narrative, of the shepherd boy facing the heavily armed Philistine champion, the odds impossibly stacked. David's strength wasn't in his armor or his sword, but in his unwavering faith and courage. Reynolds knew his fight would be similar. "General," Reynolds replied, his voice calm, "I accept the command." Sterling grunted, a sound that could have been approval or resignation. "Don't expect miracles, Colonel. Just try to keep the losses to a minimum, and for God's sake, try to get them to fly in formation." Reynolds left the office, the weight of the assignment settling on his shoulders like a lead cloak. He walked towards the dilapidated barracks of the 50th, the air thick with the smell of aviation fuel and unspoken resentment. His first encounter was with Captain James "Ghost" Foster, a pilot whose eyes held the weary wisdom of too many battles and too many disappointments. Ghost was a veteran, a natural leader, but his spirit had been chipped away by years of fighting for respect that was never given. "Colonel Reynolds," Ghost said, his voice flat, a hint of challenge in his tone. "Heard you're our new shepherd. Hope you brought a bigger stick than the last few." Reynolds met his gaze. "Captain, I brought a vision, and a demand for excellence. We are not here to be statistic. We are here to fight, and we are here to win, and we will do it together." He looked around at the assembled pilots, a mix of defiance, apathy, and raw talent. "This squadron will become the best, not because we have to, but because we choose to. We will protect every bomber, and we will bring every man home." The skepticism was palpable, a thick cloud hanging over the hangar. Reynolds knew words alone wouldn't be enough. He needed to show them, to fly with them, to push them beyond their perceived limit. His first major challenge wasn't the enemy in the skies, but the enemy within, the doubt, the fear, the ingrained belief that they were destined to fail. He had to rebuild not just a squadron but a spirit. He had to make them believe they were not just pilots, but guardians, capable of miracles. The path ahead was a wilderness fraught with peril, but Reynolds had faith that with courage and unwavering resolve, they could carve a new destiny. Subscribe to hear more stories of courage and innovation that changed the course of history. Training flights became longer, more demanding, focusing on precision formation flying, aggressive maneuvers, and disciplined communication. He flew with them, his P-51 Mustang a blur of speed and grace, demonstrating the very techniques he demanded. He was not just a commander, he was a teacher, a mentor, and a peer in the cockpit. Initially, resistance was stiff. Some pilots grumbled about the increased workload, others chafed under the strict. Private Tommy Hutchins, the youngest pilot in the squadron, barely out of flight school, found himself overwhelmed. He was eager, a natural talent but prone to recklessness, and easily discouraged. Reynolds saw the raw potential in Tommy, a spark of the future, and took him under his wing, offering quiet guidance and firm correction. Tommy, Reynolds would say, talent is a gift, but discipline is a choice. Choose wisely. Captain Ghost Foster, initially cynical, became Reynolds' most ardent supporter. He saw the transformation in the squadron, the way Reynolds' unwavering belief began to chip away at the layers of defeatism. Ghost became the bridge between Reynolds and the more reluctant pilots, translating the colonel's vision into terms they understood, enforcing the new standards with a quiet authority that commanded respect. "He ain't just talkin'," Ghost told a group of complaining pilots one evening. "He's showing us how to win, something none of us have seen in a long time." Meanwhile, across the English Channel, Major Heinrich Volker, the formidable German Luftwaffe commander, was growing increasingly confident. His squadron, the Black Knights, was a finely tuned killing machine, their tactics honed to perfection. Volker viewed the American bomber streams as a nuisance, easily picked apart by his superior pilots and aircraft. He prided himself on his strategic mind, his ability to anticipate enemy moves, and his ruthless efficiency. He had heard whispers of a new all-black American fighter squadron, dismissing them as a desperate, ill-conceived experiment. "Let them send their colored pilots," he sneered to his adjutant. "They will only make our work easier." Back at the 50th Space, Lieutenant Sarah Chen arrived, a sharp, observant woman assigned as a military liaison and medical officer. She watched Reynolds with a keen professional eye, noting his meticulous attention to detail, his calm demeanor under pressure, and his genuine concern for his men. She saw the physical toll the rigorous training took, but also the growing pride in the pilot's eye. She began to understand that Reynolds was not just training pilots, he was rebuilding men, instilling in them a sense of purpose and self-worth that had been systematically denied. One evening after a particularly grueling day of training, Reynolds found himself alone in his small office, the only light coming from a desk lamp. He opened his worn Bible, his finger tracing the words of Psalm 23. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me." He reflected on the journey of his squadron, a journey through a wilderness of doubt and prejudice. He saw parallels in the biblical narratives of perseverance, of faith being tested in barren lands, of leaders guiding their people through impossible odds. His leadership philosophy wasn't just about tactics, it was about instilling an unshakable belief in themselves, in their mission, and in a higher purpose. He taught them that true strength came not from the absence of fear, but from acting despite it, from trusting in their training and in each other. He was forging a shield, not just of metal and skill but of spirit. The 50th was no longer just a squadron, it was a testament to resilience, a beacon of hope in a world consumed by war and prejudice. Like this video if you believe in the power of faith and leadership to overcome any obstacle. The mission brief was start, a deep penetration raid, targeting a critical ball-bearing factory in Schweinfurt, Germany. Intelligence indicated heavy Luftwaffe resistance. General Sterling, though still outwardly reserved, looked at Reynolds with a new, almost imperceptible flicker of respect. "Colonel," he said, "this is the big one. Protect those bombers at all costs." Reynolds nodded, his gaze sweeping over his pilots. They were no longer the dispirited men he had first met. Their faces, though grim, held a steely resolve, a quiet confidence forged in the crucible of Reynolds' training. "Gentlemen," Reynolds addressed them, his voice calm but firm, "today we are the shepherds. Our flock is the bomber stream. Our duty is to bring every single one of them home. Fly tight, fly smart, and never ever leave a bomber unprotected." The flight across the channel was tense, the roar of the P-51 engines, a constant, vibrating presence. Tommy Hutchins, flying on Ghost's wing, gripped his controls, his heart pounding. He remembered Reynolds' words, "Discipline is a choice." He focused on his instruments, on Ghost's plane, on the vast vulnerable formation of bombers ahead. Then the sky erupted. Major Volker's Black Knights descended from the sun, a swarm of Focke-Wulf 90s and Messerschmitt 10-9s, their cannons spitting fire. Volker himself led the charge, a predator in the air, his eyes scanning for weaknesses in the American formation. He saw the red tails, the distinctive crimson paint on the 50th's aircraft, and a sneer touched his lips. "The colored boys," he muttered into his radio. "Let's see if they can dance." The air became a maelstrom of twisting metal, tracer fire and desperate maneuvers. Reynolds was everywhere, his voice a calm anchor over the radio, directing his pilots, calling out enemy positions, engaging targets with deadly precision. He flew with an almost supernatural intuition, anticipating Volker's moves, weaving through the chaos like a master conductor. Ghost, a whirlwind of aggression, shot down 2 German fighters in quick succession, his experience a vital counterpoint to the enemy's ferocity. But the Germans were relentless. A P-51 on the squadron's flank took a direct hit, spiraling downwards, a plume of black smoke marking its tragic descent. A collective gasp went through the radio channels, quickly stifled by Reynolds' sharp command, "Hold formation, stay focused." The loss was a searing pain, a reminder of the brutal cost of war, but it only hardened their resolve. Volker, frustrated by the unexpected tenacity of the Red Tails, changed tactic. He ordered a split attack, sending a portion of his squadron to draw the P-51s away, while he led the rest in a direct, high-speed assault on the lead bomber formation. It was a classic move, designed to break the escort's discipline. Reynolds saw it. "Volker's trying to split us," he yelled, his voice cutting through the static. "Ghost, take 3 and cover the flank. The rest of us, maintain tight escort. Do not break formation." It was a gamble, leaving a smaller group to face Volker's main thrust, but Reynolds knew his pilots. He had drilled them for this. He had taught them that their strength was in their unity, their ability to act as a single, unbreakable shield. Tommy Hutchins, finding himself directly in Volker's path, felt a surge of adrenaline. He saw a German fighter lining up on all his training, all of Reynolds' lessons, coalesced into a single decisive moment. He broke from his position, a calculated risk, and engaged the German, his guns blazing. The enemy fighter exploded, but Tommy was now exposed. Volker himself, seeing the young pilot's audacious move, turned his attention to Tommy, a grim smile on his face. Just as Volker locked onto Tommy, Reynolds swooped in, his P-51 a red-tailed Avenger. He engaged Volker directly, a brief furious dance of 2 masters. Reynolds, using a maneuver he had perfected, outmaneuvered the German ace, forcing Volker to break off his attack on Tommy and disengage. It was the sling and stone moment, the precise, unexpected move that turned the tide. The 50th, though battered and bruised, held the line. The bombers, though shaken, continued their journey towards the target. The valley of death had been traversed, and the Red Tails had emerged, not unscathed, but unbroken. Comment your thoughts on what true leadership means in moments of crisis. The sky, once a canvas of fire and smoke, was now a vast empty expanse. The remaining P-51s of the 50th Fighter Squadron, their fuselages scarred by bullet holes, their pilots exhausted but exhilarated, escorted the battered bomber stream back towards England. As they crossed the coast, the sight of the green fields below brought a wave of profound relief. One by one, the Red Tails landed, their engines sputtering, their tires kissing the tarmac. Ground crew rushed out, their faces a mix of anxiety and hope. Reynolds taxied his plane to a halt, the silence of the cockpit a stark contrast to the roar of battle. He climbed out, his legs stiff, his body aching, but his spirit soaring. He looked around, counting the planes, counting the faces. Every single pilot of the 50th Fighter Squadron who had taken off that morning had returned. Some planes were riddled with holes, some pilots had minor injuries, but they were all alive. And miraculously, every single bomber they had been assigned to protect had also made it back, albeit some severely damaged. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, waiting on the tarmac, rushed to meet them, her medical kit at the ready. She moved among the pilots, checking for injuries, her eyes reflecting the shared relief. She saw Tommy Hutchins, his face streaked with oil and sweat, but his eyes shining with a newfound maturity. He had faced death and emerged a Ghost clapped Reynolds on the shoulder, a rare genuine smile breaking through his usual stoicism. "You did it, Colonel," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You brought 'em all home." General Sterling received the mission report with a stunned silence. The 50th Fighter Squadron, the problem unit, had not only completed their mission, but had done so with an unprecedented success rate, protecting every bomber and suffering no fatality among their own pilots. The numbers spoke for themselves, shattering every preconceived notion, every racist whisper. The general looked at Reynolds, a man he had once dismissed, and saw not just a brilliant pilot, but a leader of extraordinary courage and conviction. The Goliath of prejudice had not been entirely vanquished, but a mighty blow had been struck, a crack appearing in its seemingly impenetrable armor. Across the lines, Major Heinrich Volker, nursing a bruised ego and a damaged aircraft, received his own report. He had underestimated the Red Tails. He had dismissed them as inferior, but they had fought with a ferocity and discipline he had rarely encountered. He had seen the skill of their leader, the man who had forced him to break off. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that the war in the skies had just become far more complicated. Colonel Reynolds stood before his squadron later that evening, not in a formal address, but in the camaraderie of the mess hall. He looked at their tired but proud faces, at the bonds forged in fire. "Today," he said, his voice quiet but resonant, "you proved what courage, discipline, and faith can accomplish. You didn't just protect bombers, you protected a truth. You showed the world what men, united in purpose, can achieve, regardless of the color of their skin." He thought of David, not just for his victory over Goliath, but for his unwavering belief in the face of overwhelming odds. The 50th had walked through the valley of the shadow of death, and they had feared no evil, for they had each other, and they had a leader who believed in them more than they believed in themselves. The legacy of the 50th Fighter Squadron, the Red Tails, would echo through history. They had not only turned the tide in the skies over Germany, but had also ignited a spark of transformation, paving the way for future generations. Their story was a testament to the power of the human spirit, a reminder that impossible odds are merely a challenge for those with unwavering faith and the courage to lead. They said no black man could lead a fighter squadron until he brought all 50 pilots home alive, proving that true leadership knows no color, only character. Subscribe and click the notification bell to never miss our stories of transformation and triumph.